Welcome to Ladies Talking Leafs. I'm Chris.
And I'm Sil.
And not the greatest feeling right now in Leafs Nation. Leafs are down in the series 2-0 versus the Florida Panthers in round 2 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. But a couple of good news items that we want to get to first. We should have mentioned this on our last show, but it's too much excitement, I guess, with the first round win versus Tampa in 19 years. But yeah, so what is exciting is that the Leafs are going to Sweden as part of the NHL Global Series. So that's something that we've never been in over to Europe like the Leafs anyways. And yeah, so the teams going across there are the Senators, the Minnesota Wild, the Detroit Red Wings, and the Leafs. So yeah. What do you think, Sil? It's going to be good. Yeah.
So this is obviously part of the NHL Global Series. There have been various teams that have gone over to different countries. I think last year it was to Czechia, I believe. But I think hopefully the fact that the Leafs are going to be part of this is going to give a little bit more profile to the series, and as well the fact that they're going to be in Sweden because that's obviously also a very popular hockey destination, very high participation there. So, yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. And obviously our connection with Sweden. And,
yes.
With Boreas Salming and Inga Hammerstrom as well, who came over with Salming at the time in 1973. So there's that I'm sure a lot of the Swedish population knows about the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's for sure. Yeah, so that's really exciting.
So we're hopeful that we'll be able to report on that as well in November.
Yeah, more on that later.
Yes. So another exciting news came out in the past week, and that's regarding Mitch Marner being named as a nominee for the Selke Trophy. Also nominated for the award are Boston Bruins Patrice Bergeron, which is no surprise, and the New Jersey Devils, Nico Hischier. So this is a real great thing for Mitch, long overdue. Yes, we've talked a lot about, how he plays in all situations. Typically, this is like an award that is usually given out to centermen. So the fact that he's nominated as a winger, that's also a big deal.
So it was interesting though. I was listening to, I guess, a bit of a review on NHL.com, and the reporters there, they were saying how, obviously Bergeron's a 5-time winner of the trophy. They should rename it after him. But yeah, like it is normally a centerman that gets that award. But I guess what the NHL is, or I guess the NHL people who vote on it anyways, they're looking at other criteria. Like they said, like Marner had 104 takeaways, 45 block shots during the regular season, and average ice time 21 minutes and 17 seconds. So, and he plays in all situations. So
and just shy of 100 points as well. So
exactly. Yeah. And they're taking into account the offensive part of the game too, not just how you can basically do both and consistently. Basically, that was the other thing. So,
we obviously think he should be a shoo-in.
Yes, yeah. But it was interesting too. Like a lot of the Western Conference teams, like they were saying that the people that vote need to stay up longer because all the three nominees are from the East, right?
Yeah, I could agree with that.
Yeah, because they were saying, how about Andrzej Kopitar was the one.
I think he has been nominated before, though.
Yes, yeah. I think he's won it before.
I think he might have won even. Yeah. Anyway, we'd have to look that up, but
no. So congrats to Mitch on being nominated. That's really good. And and a reminder before we get into the main part of our show, reminder for all our listeners, if you can please leave us a rating or a review. Let us know what you think of the show. It's easy. Yeah, it's very easy on Apple and Spotify. On Apple, you just have to scroll down to the bottom of the profile page and just click the 5 stars, like Sil was just saying. And Spotify, it's at the top. And again, at the top of the page, as soon as you get in.
Makes it easy.
Yeah. So that's, if we could do that for us, that would be fantastic.
And also, we are on YouTube now, so you can watch us and listen to us. So be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at LTL 1917 to watch our show and to see our videos of games we've attended during the regular season and the playoffs. So hopefully we're going to have a lot more playoff content as we go through this. So also don't forget we're publishing weekly now for the playoffs. So be sure to follow us and listen to our show. So now it's time to get into this episode, and we're going to start off with some Leaf talk, and then we're going to run the playoff, Ladies Talkin Leafs Playoff Highlight Reel. And in our third period segment, we welcome back again our Ladies Talkin Leafs Insider, Mike Augello, to get his thoughts on the Leafs' second round series versus the Panthers. So without any further ado, let's talk Leafs.
All right. So like I mentioned before, we're down 2-0 right now going into game 3. So basically tonight's game 3 is a must win for us, I think, anyways, against Florida down in Sunrise. And it's going to be interesting what Sheldon Keefe decides to do with the lineup. The odd thing in this series is that for both home games, anyways, the Leafs really didn't play that badly. It's just that they made dumb mistakes or they didn't show up for like the short period of time, couple of minutes or a minute 30 seconds, and then Florida made them pay right away. Like they managed to capitalize on it. So yeah, I just think the key really is I think Sheldon Keefe, I think they're going to go 11-7 for game number 3. It's rumblings anyways that's going to be happening, but they really just need to worry about starting on time and for every period and not falling asleep even towards the end of the period too, because there have been some goals let in throughout these playoffs where last minute of the period they've let in some, and that just deflates the team basically when that happens, right? And they need to get their power play going. I believe they're 1 for 7 in the series, and and their power play is it's 25% right now in the playoffs, and
that's not good enough.
That's not good enough, even though we were 20. It was 20. We need to be closer to the 30% mark, anyways, to be better. And right now we're 6th in the league in the playoffs for the power play. So what I think there is, and maybe you can tell me if you think this is wrong, but I think Willie should be put up to the top unit. Like he's been on the second unit. He was a little bit in the game number 2 because he started going, let's just say, in the third period. We'll be talking about that in a minute. But I just think give him that extra ice time, because when you look at it in game number 1, it was like a ridiculous amount of difference. Like Willie had 1:10 seconds, and let's say Marner had over 4 minutes on the power play. Like that's just too much. They need to manage it better, or Keefe needs to either manage that better or just put him on the first unit.
Oh, I think that's probably would be a good thing. And I think that would be helpful to get Willie's game going too, because, he can really he can really cycle the puck. And, it's, the thing is too, is that different series call for different player combinations and different dynamics on the ice. And, where O'Reilly being on the first power play unit, maybe that worked well against Tampa, but maybe against Florida, it's not working so well. So I think maybe you do need to switch that up and give our dynamic players, more time on there, because the thing is there's a lot more open space to skate in this series. Against Tampa, you knew you had to get the greasy goal because they were on you all the time. It was very tight. Yes, Florida is a great forechecking team, but as far as space on the ice to skate, there's way more room here. So that bodes better for, a player that is more mobile and can cycle like Willie. I think that's probably an adjustment they need to make, because the other thing is they're not really getting in on Bobrovsky that well either. I think Florida is doing a really good job at keeping that net front clear. So they're not getting in there for that greasy goal against him, or able to really get, to block him or reduce his vision as well. So bottom line is they've got to either do that better, or they've got to give somebody else a shot. But I think that they to have, more confusion, having Willie on there is probably a good thing, because then you've got like him and Mitch that are setup guys that can potentially, create something.
Yeah, and they can like cycle the puck around and do that. And like you were saying, when it comes to skating, and we were yelling in game 2 while we were there, saying, or you were anyways, mostly saying skate, right? But the thing, like, that's the other thing they need to do, is just like not let. They're basically standing there letting Florida set up their defensive mode, and it's like you can't do that. You got to get going, like move the puck, get it.
Yeah, there's too many times where they were standing still. Like their feet have got to be moving, and that's never a good sign when your team stops skating.
Yeah, and then that way, like, Florida can try all they want with their forecheck, but we should be long gone by that time. Let's just say, right? Like, the puck should have been moving out of our zone and going in through the neutral zone into the offensive zone. So, those are just some of the changes that well, it has to start tonight, right? Like, and I'm wearing my little necklace here before I forget. My little necklace, I found a little Maple Leaf necklace. Sorry, I found a little Maple Leaf necklace. I got it talking to my mic. But anyways, I got this from, I don't know how old I was. Maybe I was 13 years old, and I just found it today. So maybe that's good luck. We'll see what happens. But yeah.
I'll go with that.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about Willie a little bit more here.
Well, a lot, I think that he has been looking like just the disappearing Willie again for the start of this series. He has, I think he's got like 13 shots so far, but his shooting percentage, I think it is under 6%, which isn't that great. He was sort of missing in action, and it was very plainly obvious in the second game, because he showed up so much in the third period.
Yeah.
So,
and that's why the fans and even the media, whatever, like, that's why it brings attention to it, because it's so different from one period to another. It's weird. Yeah. The way that is. And,
but I think, Keefe does have to get him more engaged and get him in to spots where he can succeed, like, I don't know. I think maybe I think it would be good for him to play with Matthews again a little bit more. I know that they like that Marner-Matthews combo, but sometimes I think that it's good to mix that up a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think of that?
Yeah. There is that. And, but again, I guess we talked a little bit about it already with the power play. I think that's going to be a difference maker. I think he may be a little bit pissed with Keefe and the fact that he is on the second power play unit. But then if Keefe, let's say they go with the 11-7 and they bring in Gustafsson, like, that will bring in more creativity for that second power play unit if Willie stays there.
Yeah.
And that may help as well. Because Giordano has been, like, I don't know. I guess he's just getting tired, I think.
I think so.
And so doing the 11-7 will help that part as well. And because Giordano is normally on that second power play unit, he's in there. But Gustafsson, the one game that he came in game 6 versus Tampa, like, you could notice a difference on that second power play unit. And he's fresh, obviously, right? He hasn't played. He only played the one game, and that was it. So, with Willie, I think it's partly that he might be a little bit pissed because he is, I guess, on the, even though it's not a demotion, but he probably thinks of it that way. And, so because his average ice time actually has been pretty close to what, like, it's pretty even throughout the playoffs. He's averaging almost like about 19 minutes. Right. So whereas, like, obviously Matthews and Marner, they're playing upwards of let's say 25 minutes, around there, 24, 25, and JT is 21, and around the 21 range, right? So I think by
and it's the power play minutes is the difference.
Yeah, that's the difference. And that's where I think if Keefe manages it a bit better and gives him that extra minute to get him up to, let's say, the 20-minute mark, because obviously the minutes make a difference huge for the player too, right? Obviously he needs to be able to handle it, and I think Willie can definitely handle it the way he can skate and go around with the puck, and it's just that additional threat that Florida will have to think about. And but yeah, he has to get that shooting percentage. I mean, you got to think that it's going to change after having all that shots to be less than 6%.
Yeah.
Matthews and I guess he's at the top right now in on the team with the 36 shots. Matthews has 35 in the playoffs. But Matthews is around 14-15% shooting percentage. So that's like double. So you got to think it's going to change for Willie. Yeah. So.
Well, let's just hope that he basically takes what he did in the third period and, and just builds on that, because, if he had played that whole game that way, we would have won that game probably.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. And get some traffic in front of Bobrovsky.
Yeah.
On top of it. But
yeah, 100%. Like we need to make it so that he's not seeing everything. And we did such a good job of that against Vasilevsky. So we need to kind of implement that same thing. But the main thing is they basically, the team has to play their game. They can't let Florida dictate the type of game that we're going to play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's basically, we're just letting them dictate the pace, the flow, the energy.
Yeah.
And it's sad that happened that way at home, because the crowds were great. So you cannot blame the fact that you couldn't feed off the crowd energy.
No, I know. And that's what the media is trying to put that out there, which is ridiculous, really.
No.
I mean, when you only win one home game so far in the playoffs, I mean, what do you expect?
We've been to however small amount of playoff games there have been in the last few years. We've been to several of them, and by far these are the best crowds that we've had in the last, 5 years or more that I can recall.
Even when we're down, we're still doing at least in the upper bowl for sure.
Maybe they just can't hear us. I don't know.
Maybe they can't hear us. I don't know. But yeah, every time we talk about Mr. Willie or Dr. Nylander shows up, so let's cross our fingers that happens for the rest of this series, that Dr. Nylander shows up. And we need a lot more highlight because we need a lot more highlight reel material, if I can get that out of my mouth. We need a lot more highlight reel material from our core five, that's for sure. So we've picked out, there is some highlight reel material anyways, and we picked out our top 3 playoff highlight reel moments from the last 2 games of this series. So let's roll it.
All right. So coming in at number 3, we have Michael Bunting. Coming back from the 3-game suspension, he's been maybe a little quieter than we're used to seeing him, not maybe chirping as obviously as he does, but he's brought the energy to the lineup, and he's staying out of the penalty box, which is key. And he also scored a really nice goal in game 1. So, I personally, I would like to see, I know that there's an edge there and they're afraid of him, doing something stupid. But for the most part, maybe he's ended up in the box a few times, but he doesn't normally get the suspension. So I think if he can keep his emotions under control, but still bring his usual energy. I mean, that Brandon Montour guy is a nonstop chatterbox. He won't stop talking. So honestly, why doesn't he just talk to him all night? That would be good. Get him off his game a bit.
I didn't realize Montour was that kind of player.
Oh yeah, I noticed it constantly. He is talking after the play all the time with a goofy smile on his face. So someone needs to get that goofy smile off his face.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, Scarborough, I'm a fan of Scarborough, obviously, coming from Scarborough. So, the first couple of games, he's averaged about 14, 15 minutes. And yeah, he's been relatively quiet, with the chirping part of it. But, if I think he can elevate that just a little bit, and with the chirping, but stay out of the penalty box. That's the main thing. And Wes McCauley is the ref tonight. One of the refs. So so he just needs to keep it under control, and I think it'll be good. He scored that goal was a beauty to tie it up in that.
Oh my God, yeah.
And it's just too bad that they I guess had the little lapse there and let it get away in game number 1. But well deserving of our number 3 spot, coming back from he brought a lot of energy. Obviously, he was out for most of the series versus Tampa. So moving on to number 2, bringing the physicality. We love physicality in the playoffs. Luke Schenn basically bulldozed Keefe Tkachuk, or Matthew Tkachuk. Sorry, Keefe is his dad. Oh my God. I'm going back in the day there. I did used to watch Keefe Tkachuk, but anyhow, Luke Schenn bulldozed Matthew Tkachuk, and then Jake McCabe making some big hits in the game as well. And then even Morgan Rielly getting in on the action too, getting in a hit or a couple of big hits, although I'm a little bit worried with Rielly doing that. That's not his game. But that's going back to what you were saying in the last segment there. It's great to have these hits, but really, like, that's not our game either, sort of thing. Right? So
no, exactly. That's why, like, with McCabe, I like the physicality, but he has to, I don't know. It's not I want to reel it in a bit, but he needs to pick his spots, because he did get caught out of position making that type of play that directly led to a goal. So you want to do that, but you need to be smart. You can't just be running these guys, all over the place. Like, you have to make a smart play at the same time. So
but they got I guess we got 47 hits in game number 1, 42 in game number 2, and we were in game number 1, we were better than Florida, let's just say, in the average hits. And then game number 2, we're pretty much even. But
honestly, for me, like, physicality is not just labeling guys with big hits either. It's also being strong on the puck. And as far as the forechecking battles, Florida is doing much better than us there. Like, we need to be stronger on the puck. We need to not allow them to take the puck off of us as much.
Yeah, the takeaways, I was just going to say, they're much better in this series so far.
And that's usually our game. Like, normally, from the stats going into this series, that's something that we led them on. So we're allowing them to take over that, and that's not good. So we just need to be stronger in that area as well.
And on the opposite side, we're doing more giveaways, which is not
which they're facilitating that too,
Yeah. You got to give them credit.
Yeah. All right. So coming in on our number 1, and this is bittersweet, is Matthew Knies. We're giving the kid the top spot this week on the playoff highlight reel. In game 1, Knies got his first playoff goal and his first NHL career goal, which was a beauty. I mean, the poise this kid has is incredible. So he was going from the forehand to a bit of a spinorama move on the backhand, getting it past Bobrovsky, and like Bobrovsky had like nothing.
Yeah, he was falling down. He was
because so he had a completely open net there on that corner. Anyways, it was beautiful, and he's just he processes so quickly on the ice. He's a really quick thinker. He's got a great hockey IQ, and he's just a really talented and skilled player, and is just so unfortunate that, he ended up getting taken out of this series.
Yeah. And that Sam Bennett basically took his head and smashed it to the ice, but that's okay with the NHL. So
I guess it is
too much into that. We've talked enough on social media about that.
Yes. Yeah. We will get into it a little bit in our next segment as well. So anyway, we all know the Leafs are not in a great position, being down 2-0 in this series right now against Florida. And nobody better to talk to about it than our Ladies Talkin Leafs Insider, Mike Augello. And he is joining us to give us his thoughts on this series and how the Leafs can get back into it in our third period segment.
For our third period segment, we want to welcome to the show our Ladies Talking Leafs Insider, Mike Augello, once again, and just to get his thoughts on what's going on with the Leafs in the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Oh, joy.
So just to give you a little background, Mike covers the Leafs and the NHL as a reporter and does a podcast with HockeyBuzz.com. He is also co-host of Off the Post Radio and the Leafs Combo, and he is a writer for Full Press Hockey. Mike also dropped some news this past week that he is going to be covering daily coverage of the Buffalo Sabres with National Hockey Now. As always, thanks for coming on the show, Mike, and congratulations on the new gig. So before we get into the Leafs a little bit more, you give us the lowdown on your new gig with Hockey Now.
Thank you, ladies. Well, yeah, I'm basically, I've been providing daily coverage for Hockey Buzz, covering the Leafs for about 14 years. And I've been a hockey fan for a long time. So adding the Sabres to my portfolio is, not a big challenge because I've been here my entire life. Probably, I think I can probably do a more effective job covering the Sabres because they don't pull at my heartstrings the way other teams that shall not be named do. But it'll be a little more work, but that's something I've never shied away from, and I love hockey and I love writing about hockey. So, I'm satisfying both ends of the Niagara Peninsula.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well, congrats again on that. You. And let's move on to the pulling at your heartstrings team. Then. Oh, yeah. So the Leafs are down right now in the series as we're doing the show 2-0. And my question for you, first question is how Sheldon Keefe is handling the bench. I guess, I don't know, back in the old days, to me, they used to have like set lines all the time. We always knew who was playing with who. And this whole season, and even previous to this, it's like he's never had anything set. And I'm just wondering, like it's good to have the mix and match and all players can play together. But do you think like this is becoming maybe a little bit of an issue for this round? Or do you think it's, like, I don't know. I like the players, I would think, like the continuity of the same, like knowing who they're playing with, right? Like, especially on the defense. Anyways,
right. I mean, the defensive pairings have been pretty static throughout the playoffs. I mean, the only change, which is I believe was a dramatic upgrade, was sitting Justin Hall and putting in Timothy Liljegren, and they had to give Liljegren a little bit of a support structure by putting Gustafsson in there, but Gustafsson is just as bad defensively as Justin Hall, so they've gone to 6D with Giordano and Liljegren, McCabe, Brody, and Riley and Shen. And in the 2 games against Florida, the pairing that's been the big problem, and I would think it's the most dependable defensively. Brody and McCabe have been victimized in both games, probably because they're matching up against the Tkachuk line. But they have not. I think they were total -5 in game 1, and I think they were on the ice for 2 of the 3 goals in game 2. So they've been struggling, and I think McCabe sort of was trying to step up physically and match what Florida is doing. And I don't think you can do that and take yourself out of position because that's exactly what Florida wants. But as for the forward line situation, I mean, really, they've been jumbling Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nylander, flipping the wingers back and forth, that they've played with each other so much that I think they're used to it no matter who they're playing with. Maybe the left side, I think they brought Bunting back up to that top line because I think he is the best facilitator for Matthews and Marner. And now with the injury to Matthew Nyes, Yarncroke or Kerfoot, I know they're using Kerfoot with O'Reilly and Achari on a checking line. But, you could, if they need a jump, you could see Kerfoot elevated because he worked well with Tavares before. I think they sort of mix and match based on who they want to play, who they want Matthews to play against or Tavares to play against, but now they're not going to have the last line change, so they're probably going to get stuck with whoever Paul Maurice wants to play against whatever center.
Yeah, do you think though, like it's like it hasn't been too much of a chess match between the 2 coaches, but do you think the fact that like Marner and Matthews, I looked like they're playing it was 24, 25 minutes, both games. And then there's like,
it's too much.
Yeah, it's like a little bit of a drop off, I guess, to Tavares is playing 21 minutes. And then our friend William Nylander is down to like 19.
We'll get to him in a second. But
yeah, but I don't know, that ice time part, do you think that's anything that Keefe, like management wise, like if there's something he could...
In the playoffs, you want to play your best players the most. And, they've been playing from behind. And when you play from behind, you need your offensive. I mean, ideally, I would think you'd want to divvy up the time of Matthews, Tavares, and O'Reilly, have them be around 18, 19 minutes, maybe a little less, and have the fourth line guy Kampf be like 10, 12. But when you're behind, you have to, and also you're moving O'Reilly up on the line with Tavares, or you're moving Tavares up on the line with Matthews after PK. They always load up the next line, all the guys who weren't on the penalty kill. So, I mean, could he be better with time management? Sure. But the thing is that when you're behind, time management be damned. You know, got 2 days in between game 2 and game 3. So I would have emptied the tank on these guys just to catch up and just to tie the game. And
well, I would agree with that too. Like, and I was actually surprised that in the third period, he didn't play them more for that reason.
Yeah.
Like I thought at that point you need a goal. So, but they had, Kampf out there, like the fourth line for, within the last 2 minutes or whatever. Right. So I thought that was, I don't know.
Yeah, but in that instance, they had loaded up, if I'm remembering correctly, they had loaded up with basically the power play configuration. Before they had pulled Samsonov, they had Tavares, O'Reilly. I think they had think they had 4 forwards and Morgan Riley trying to get the tying goal, and then they sort of put that Kampf line out there, which the fourth line was pretty effective.
I guess that's probably why they wanted to get the stop there so that they could get Samsonov out, probably.
Right, and give that top unit or that power play unit a blow for 45 seconds or whatever, so you could get them out there for the last 2 minutes. But I mean, Sergei Bobrovsky was wearing his blue tights and in red tape in both games, so I mean. Yeah. I wrote on after the game. I wrote on Hockey Buzz yesterday. It was a 47-second brain cramp, and if I needed any kind of, sort of support to my point of view, because sometimes, I say something on the Buzzcast or I say something on the convo, and I'm wondering, am I like out in left field with my point of view? And then I heard Pierre LeBrun talking about it yesterday on TSN radio. And I said, okay, now I feel better for my point of view. And if you look at the 8 games that the Leafs have played in the playoffs, and they're 4-4 right now, they 1-6 over Tampa, and now they've lost the first 2 against Florida. Of the 8 games, they've been the better team in 2, maybe 2.5. In the Tampa series, they were destroyed in game 1. They led from the very beginning in game 2. They came back from a deficit in game 3 after blowing a lead. They were down all game in game 4 and came back from 3 goals to tie it and win it in overtime. Game 5 was a disaster, another bad game. And game 6 was a typical playoff 1-1 game going to overtime. So in that series, they were the better team in 2 games at best. 2. And now in this series, you can say they were the better team in game 2, but they blew a 2-goal lead in 47 seconds at the beginning of the second period, and then it could never get back. And my assertion right now with this team is maybe they scored a lot of points against Tampa, but their core group against Florida has lost to the Panthers core group. Matthews, Marner, Tavares, and Nylander have been outworked by Tkachuk and Bennett and Barkov and Montour. And if you can get all the support goals from Nyes and Bunting and Kerfoot, but if your core group doesn't score and best the other team, why bother?
Okay, so that actually, I was going to ask this question a little later on in our discussion, but I'm going to move it up now because it fits what we're talking about right now. So then, despite being down 2 games, like you said, the Leafs appear to be the better team so far. I think we can all agree. So no doubt Boston was feeling the same, that they were the better team the whole way through. So what do the Leafs need to do differently then to come out on top in this series to avoid the same fate?
The Leafs have better talent. They have not shown that they're the better team. Right now, Florida is the better team because they're working more cohesively together and they're getting the goaltending. I mean, Ilya Samsonov has not played badly. Mm-hmm. He's played, but again, in the Tampa series, he really wasn't challenged in the Game 2 win. He gave up 4 goals in the Game 4 win, but then, he kept them close when they were down. Game 6, he was better than Vasilevsky. In these 2 games, Bobrovsky has out goaltended him, and
but he's probably been better than any goalie though so far in the playoffs. Though, no, like in this series, like Bobrovsky.
Yeah, in the second round, Bobrovsky has been the best goaltender, better than. I mean, Jake Ottinger had a bad game in Game 1 for Dallas, but then he was good in Game 2. So far, Bobrovsky has been the best goalie.
Like I was looking at his stats, and he has actually had the best his best games period for the whole season in these 2 games.
No. So I can't continue. I can't.
No. Well, I was going to say, of course he does. It's like former Leafs scoring against Toronto. Of course they do. So, but he has played wonderfully, and the question is, how long can he keep that up? Because he is not a young guy, but now he's getting. I heard the analysis. Oh, the 2 days rest is the best thing because Bobrovsky now gets a chance to. I think it's actually a good thing for Toronto because they need to sort of stop Florida's momentum. And 2 days. You think that team wanted 2 days off? They wanted to keep playing every other day.
Well, I think that's true because really, I'm just looking at this and they are the ultimate in the opportunistic team, basically they have scored within 5 seconds on turnovers 9 times in these playoffs so far. So I think they just are the type of team that they wait for you to make a mistake. And when you do, they're going to make you pay because they've got those great game breakers. So I think that's one of the things the Leafs tonight need to do is basically not turn the puck over.
No, I would challenge any of the analytics aficionados out there. I'm putting out the call for somebody to calculate how many goals the Maple Leafs have given up within 2 to 3 minutes of them scoring.
Oh, for sure.
And I will bet you easily, it's probably 30. And then, then I'm talking about regular season and playoffs. Mm-hmm. They did it in the Tampa series. And in this series, the Lundell goal wasn't right after, but it was fairly close. But against Tampa, the Leafs would score and Tampa would come right back down and score and respond. And it's like, there's nothing more soul crushing than a goal right after you think you have the momentum. Yeah. And everybody says momentum is not quantifiable baloney because you watch what goes on in these playoffs and you see a team give up a goal and then all of a sudden you see the look in their eyes and then all of a sudden they've given up 2 goals and then the Leafs come back from 4-1 and it's tied and then Tampa's lost the game. I mean that happens. So I think momentum is a real thing and they give away their momentum more than any team. Of the 8 teams in the second round right now, they're the team that has led the least. Because if you look, they didn't lead at all in games 1, in game 4 until they won in overtime, in game 5 against Tampa, and in both games, in the game 1, no, and they held the lead for a period in game 2. They don't hold the lead, and in the playoffs, if it was in their mind to say, okay, we've got a 2-1 lead in the second period, let's hold on to that. That was gone in 19 seconds.
Yeah. No, I don't know. It's just like it's old habits for me. Like I'm thinking like they don't start the periods on time or they don't start the game on time or they're letting in a goal at the end of the period, like closer to the end of the period, which kind of you go into the intermission and it kind of blows the wind out the sails or sails in the wind, whatever.
Or take a penalty at the end.
Or take a penalty, right? It just, I don't know. They're old habits to me, like from previous seasons. Yeah, and they're crushing. And I don't, like, my question, I guess the next question we had for you was, in terms of the team itself, do you think the fact that they finally won this whole 19 years, like the curse and all that, like, do you think it's made them relax a little bit too much against, like, coming into the series? Like, because the top players just don't seem to have it, I guess, whatever that it is, if it's killer instinct or whatever. But they have 0 points in the first 2 games.
Going into this series, that was my main concern for actually both teams, because, Florida could say, we just won our Stanley Cup. We beat the President's Trophy 65-win team, the team that had the best record in history. I don't think hunger is a problem for them because they've appeared very hungry in the first 2 games. With Toronto, I was worried about, okay, we're satisfied. We got the first round. Now, obviously, I don't think they want to lose, but that momentum and that motivation to win that first round was so palpable. And finally, they did it. And I thought, okay, maybe the disappointment would be 1 game, but really, and again, I harp on this, but it's a reality, and it's the reality of this core group, and it has been so since they were put together. Maybe it's a fallacy to say, a 60-minute effort in a game, but when you have the talent that they have, you have to be the better team for the majority of the game. And really, as I said, in 8 games, I think they've been the better, the majority of the game for 2, maybe 3. Maybe game 2 they were, but that 47 seconds really killed them and sapped their energy. Okay, with the talent that they have, that's inexcusable. And I don't think that's on coaching. I think that's on the players. And I've thought it's on the players for 3 or 4 years. Hence the reason why after losses to Columbus or a loss to Montreal or a loss to Tampa Bay, I didn't say blow up and trade the core group to the 4 corners of the world, but I did say that you needed to shake up this group because there's a bit of, I think, psychological complacency. And now they've been satisfied. They got by the first round. Hallelujah. There's cheering in the streets on Yonge Street. They're waving flags and, buying Tim Hortons coffee. But okay, that's not the goal here. The goal is to win the Stanley Cup for the first time since I was a month old, drinking mother's milk. It's I'm sorry. It's that's the goal.
Yeah, no, and the players were saying the right things after their win against Tampa. They were all that core group was saying all the things we mentioned on our last show. But yeah, I don't know. They're even before the series start, most people were saying, if they can get through the first round, it's just going to be like an engine, like a train. They're just going to power through and get through to the whether it be the conference final or the Stanley Cup final, right? We're still hoping, but it just hasn't been there. I don't know.
It's not if they don't work though, and it's not if the opposing team has a guy, at least one or maybe more than one, but a guy like Matthew Tkachuk who never takes a shift off. No. At all. He has got a ridiculous work ethic and a ridiculous engine, and he's always going. I
admire him. He's a pain in the ass to play. Yeah. It's not just him. And I hearken back, and I tease my friend Adam Wild, who is on Steve Dangle's podcast. Back in the day when Sam Bennett was on the trade block from Calgary, I'm like, and the reported cost was a 2nd-round pick. I'm like, go out and get this guy because, he scores 15, 20 goals at the most during the regular season, but he is a biatch to play against in the playoffs. And I think Matthew Nyes and Michael Bunting know how much of a biatch he is because they're feeling a little bit of pain right now from what Sam Bennett does. He performs, he scores in the playoffs. It's not just Tkachuk. Montour's playing that way. Barkov.
And I noticed Montour too. Like he's taken a page out of Bunting's book. He's chirping and talking after every play. He's like da 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 la la la.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I mean, but you need, and that's the thing. You need those players. Those players are difference makers in the postseason, and for all the quality that Austin Matthews has, he's not that guy. He's not going to chirp. He's just going to go out and score goals, and that's fine. But you need more vocal guys on a team, and when you have him and Mitch Marner is not a chatterbox, and John Tavares is just a workmanlike guy, and he's not going to. And William Nylander is like a mannequin out there. He doesn't say a thing. So I mean, you need the guys who sort of chirp back and forth, because that gets the blood flowing and that gets things going. And I mean, I don't know if there's enough of that on the Leafs right now, because Florida's doing all that stuff and it seems to be self-motivating, and that's how they're winning.
Do you think they took a little bit out of Bunting's sails with this whole suspension thing, and maybe he's too tempered now?
I mean, he's still chattering. I mean, but I don't think, like, he steps out of line one more time, he's going to get suspended again. And this seems like the NHL can't wait to do that. I mean, maybe that's a Toronto-centric point of view, but I mean, Sheldon Keefe essentially said, well, the cross-check that Bennett did on Bunting was the equivalent of what Austin Matthews did to Rasmus Dahlin at the outdoor game in Hamilton. I was at that game, and it was basically the same thing. It's just one was in the regular season and one was in the playoffs, and a $5,000 fine for that is ridiculous. But I knew that it wasn't suspension. I thought actually the bulldog that he did on Matthew Nyes was more suspension worthy than the cross check, because you see the cross checks all the time.
Yeah, the thing is with that Matthew Nyes play, like the angle that mostly got shown didn't really show how like he was basically cutting off the circulation and had him in a headlock and basically threw him down. And he should have at least got a roughing penalty minimum on that, because it was completely uncalled for.
And it should have been at least a double minor on the cross check, or a 5-minute on the cross check, and the 2-minute minor. And of course I said, well, it's because they were cross checking the guy that the referees hate the most. So it's almost like, so subconsciously it's like, well, gee, okay, you can get away with that. I mean, people were saying he was diving. Oh, he was diving. I mean,
how can you dive when you're already on the ground?
Right. And then for good measure, Bennett hits him again with the cross check when he's laying down on the ice. So,
No, he's not. Michael Bunting and Matthew Nyes are not Connor McDavid. If that was Connor McDavid, the guy would have got like 5 games suspension, or at least 2 game suspensions or anything, right? That's the way the NHL works, in my opinion, which is ridiculous. But we won't spend too much time on the what's your other question, Sil?
So we're talking a little bit about what Florida's doing. So like, obviously there's been a lot of talk about their relentless forecheck. So do you think this has been the difference against the Leafs so far? And if it is, or regardless, what do they need to do to neutralize this aspect of their game and basically start playing their game? Because I find that Florida is really sucking them into playing, almost like, it looks like they're sucking them into playing a regular season game somehow. And it's just that the intensity is not there until they kind of pounce on you like a cat does.
I think they're sucking them in to play their style of game rather than Toronto dictating the play because Toronto has more offensive talent. I mean, this is most of the Florida team that was the President's Trophy winner last year and scored a whole bunch of goals. Defensively, they're not very deep. I mean, I think their blue line is something that the Leafs can take advantage of, but they just haven't been able to. I mean, that's where I thought that the series would be won, was the Leafs attacking, guys like Josh Mahura, and, Radko Gudas is a tough SOB, but you can move around him, and Ekblad is playing injured. But really, the Leafs haven't taken advantage of that. And what has gone on, at least in game 1, I thought the mistake that they made was they were being proactive and saying, okay, you're not going to push us around. We're going to be physical on you. And again, Jake McCabe stepped up and was out of position on the Carter Verhaeghe the Carter Verhaeghe breakaway late in the second period after they had worked so hard to get back tied 2-2. And then he tries to make this big hit and he gets caught up the ice and Brody doesn't read it the right way and Verhaeghe goes the other way. So I think that they've been trying to be more physical and that's sort of taking them out of their game. I mean, okay, they're never going to be a tougher team than Florida. The whole purpose of going out at the deadline and getting guys like O'Reilly and Achari and Shen and Lafferty was to not be pushed around, not to be proactive, but not be pushed around, to have pushback, to have sandpaper. But you still have to maintain the game that wins you, and the game that you can play that wins you games, and that's offense. And really, okay, they scored 2 goals in game 1 and they scored 2 goals in game 2 and their core group did absolutely nothing. So what do you got to get back to? You got to get back to scoring goals.
I 100% agree with you. And I actually think that's how the series was lost last year against Tampa. There was like too many games where we just we got away from our game and tried to play their game. And I don't know why. Like that is a coaching thing, I think, when you look at that part of it.
When Sheldon Keefe said it, was baffling afterwards. And it was kind of like, okay, so what you don't know. There, right? But
I'll defend Sheldon Keefe here because I think they're telling them in the locker room, you got to do this. And then they come out completely comatose in the first 2 shifts and they give up 2 goals and everything that they accomplished in the first period was thrown into the garbage by those 2 shifts at the beginning of the second period. And then they spent the rest of the game chasing the lead and Bobrovsky stoned them blind. So, it's like there is a lack of concentration with this team. They have immense talent. They're deep. I think their defense is better than it's ever been, but there's still this complacency of the mind that continues. And again, like, I don't know if it's something where this team needs to be awakened by like a shakeup roster wise, like in the off season or what, but I don't know how many times a coach can tell them to do certain things and them not listen and there be no accountability. And I mean, honestly, I like, we'll talk about Dubas and we'll talk about Keefe and what happens if they lose, but what happens to this roster if they lose? And that's a big question for the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to think about the offseason.
No. It's only. I'll be back and we can talk about that when the offseason.
Hopefully that's still a ways down the way because if there's any team that can come back, it's this team. But they've got to get themselves parked somehow in front of Bobrovsky, and they need more than just the one and dones. Like the guy's giving up pretty juicy rebounds actually. So if anybody was in and around all that, they could probably be doing something. So they need to be getting somebody in front there and messing with him a little bit more like they did with Vasilevsky.
Right. They need to take his eyes away like with Vasilevsky, because if he sees it, he's going to stop it. But, the thing is, maybe Bunting, because Bunting is that's what he has done all year. He goes to the front of the net and he disturbs people. I think, is he afraid that he's going to get called for a penalty for, Aaron Ekblad has had him in a like Ric Flair headlock like 3 or 4 times in game 2.
Yes, that seems to be their MO. They like the headlock thing.
Yeah. And then
wrestling fans
words. Yeah. It's like, wow. But that seems to be their thing. But Toronto has to not fall into the trap of playing that game with Florida, because I think Florida wins if they play that game. Toronto's got to dictate pace. They've got to dictate the way that they attack. They have to dictate the matchups if they can. But even if they can't dictate the matchups, just go offensively.
They're the better team. Like
I almost think they'll be better off without that, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Like they just need to get out there and play, and they definitely need to win on Sunday.
Oh yeah, that's like a game 7, I think.
Yeah, if they don't win game 3, then it could be a sweep. And
oh my God, please God, no.
Right. That's a sad commentary because like you said before, there was a school of thought that they win the first round and then all of a sudden they have the confidence and they can.
Yeah.
But you look at the landscape of the Eastern Conference. Boston.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's actually it's a disgrace if they don't, because it is wide open. Like, basically, what will happen then is guess what? We're going to be seeing Carolina in the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, you watch that Carolina New Jersey series, and it's I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not disgracing Carolina. They're a very good defensive team. Freddie Anderson's played good the last couple of games. They don't really have
don't cheer for him.
Yeah, they don't really have a gifted offense without Teravainen, without Svechnikov. Jesperi Kotkaniemi, the Leaf killer, is scoring like crazy for them. But it's like, if the Leafs go up against Carolina, I mean, I think a lot of people, the majority of people, would pick Toronto, but they have to get by Florida first. And that's the thing. Like, I don't think you'll ever get a road as clear. There's no Rangers, there's no Bruins, and there's no Tampa. Okay, when's that going to happen again? And
who would have thought at the beginning of the playoffs that was going to happen? So nobody.
And they should put that up on the bulletin board
in
their dressing room and say the road is there. Like, grab a hold of it, like, get going.
But
right?
you have to want to do everything that you possibly can to do it. And I wasn't in Toronto for games 1 and 2. I'm supposed to go up for game 5 to cover the game. I wasn't there for the morning skate or what Morgan Rielly said or before game 2, but he saw that they blew an opportunity to take control of the series in game 1, and that the team needed to sort of do more in game 2 to sort of get even. And they did it for a period. And then that 47-second span killed that, and they didn't recover until probably midway through the second. And then by that point, Bobrovsky was, again, he was not Clark Kent, but he was Superman.
He
definitely locked in.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Mike, for coming on the show. It's I don't know. We're gonna hopefully we'll be, next time we talk, we'll be probably going to
conference finals.
The conference finals, maybe game 6, maybe game 7. I don't know, but of this series. But yeah, no, it's great to have your input and your background, because you're always around the Leafs. We just want to thank you for taking the time.
Anytime.
Yes.
Anytime.
So everybody, you can check out Mike's blog and podcast on hockeybuzz.com and the Leafs Convo. And if you don't follow him on Twitter, you should. And his handle is at Mike in Buffalo. So definitely check him out there. Great Leafs talks after the show. And of course, Leafs Nation, we like to talk our Leafs. So thanks again, Mike.
My pleasure.
Okay. Always great to having Mike on the show. He's a member of the media and has a great passion for the Leafs, just like us. And we definitely appreciate that.
So we'll see how it goes in the next couple of games. No question, we need our top players to be our top players. 0 points in the first 2 games of this series doesn't bode well for us if they want to bring this series back home for game 5. We definitely, I would say even a split is not going to cut it. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but we have to get minimum 1 game out of these next 2. Yeah. So anyway, if Florida could win 2, we can win 2.
Yeah, because we are the better team, really.
Yes.
But
we need to play like it. We need to play like it for a full 60.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So be sure to follow us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Our handle is at LTL 1917. And I'm having a problem this show with my words. Anyways, I'll get better. And again, a reminder to leave us a rating or a review and let us know what you think of the show. It's easy on Apple and Spotify, like we mentioned earlier in the show. It's just a click, and it gives our show more exposure as a source for Leaf content. And we thank you for taking the time.
Mm-hmm. And another way to help us out is by visiting our Ko-fi page at Ko-fi.com. You can follow us there, and if you choose to, you can buy us a coffee. Any donation you give us makes it easier for us to produce the show and make it even better for you. So you can find the link to our Ko-fi page on any of our social media profile pages or our show notes.
And as always, we want to take time to thank our healthcare workers and first responders for everything that they do.
And thanks as always for watching and listening. So until next time, go Leafs, go!
Do you believe?